Hi, I'm Jim and this is Jim's Fix-It Shop. And I wasn't going to do a video on this. It's a coworker's lawnmower. Let me tip you down and show you this jewel. I'm guessing this is probably about a 4-horse motor, maybe. It says on the cover 140 cc. And it's a Craftsman. It's got a Briggs & Stratton engine on it. That's why she bought it. She figured it was a good engine. But I have never seen anything this cheap in my life. It does have overhead valves, but I want to show you the carburetor. Now this is the second time I've cleaned the carburetor. And this thing, including the float bowl and the float, is 100% plastic. It's like the old machines they had, I think in the mid 80s. No control on the engines. You just pull the cord and they start. They're automatic choke. The choke is always closed. And when the engine starts, let's see, how's this thing? The vacuum sucks the choke open and it quits choking it. But the butterfly for the choke, the shaft, it has a metal spring on it, and that's it. And the throttle or the butterfly for the throttle does appear to be maybe a thin piece of copper, but I have just never seen it. Now, it's not unusual to have a plastic float. A lot of them have them, but they don't have a plastic needle. The only thing on this is the rubber tip, and that's probably because they couldn't get the plastic to seal down in there against that seat. And I don't have a problem. I don't see any grooves in the rubber. So, and I don't have a problem with it leaking gas. It's just not sucking any gas through the carburetor. This is the second time I've had it in my ultrasonic cleaner. This time I let it run for about 45 minutes. And we're going to put this thing back together and cross our fingers. I checked the compression on it. It's got 50 pounds of compression. And I'm old school. I don't know a lot about these new engines, but that just doesn't sound like enough compression to make this thing run. I did squirt some oil in it, and I brought it up to 65 pounds of compression. But as soon as the oil burns off, you're going to drop right back down to 50. Spark plug looked good. The gap looked a little small to me, so I opened it up a little, and we'll put this thing together and see what happens. Now I'll show you how the carburetor goes back together. Let me tip this down again. There is no spring on the float to help it seal. So it's kind of a handful because that spring helped hold the needle valve into the float. You just kind of hang the needle on there and drop it down here in place. Now the only thing they did good, it came out already, is you can slip the pin in right now. And they don't have holes where the pin goes. They have slots, and the bottom is a little bigger. So once you put it in there and you just snap it in. But once you get it in, you have to pull the pin out sideways like you normally would a real carburetor. Let me hang this back in here again. Like I said, I really miss that spring holding that needle in place. And now you just snap that in. And you can tell when you got it in all the way because it will slide back and forth. And that's it. Now, of course, you have a plastic float bowl with a rubber O-ring to seal it. And you really got to push that to get it in. And it doesn't want to turn if you don't get it lined up right. I guess a little WD-40 would have helped on that. There we go. Hey, it does have metal screws that hold it together. Now, whenever you're putting metal screws, and these are self-tapping, into plastic, no matter what you're working on, turn them backwards. And you can feel the thread dropping into the original thread that the screw made the first time. As if you take these apart enough and just keep screwing them in and out, you're going to strip out the threads. Now, I bet you're wondering, how does this carburetor hold onto the engine? Well, I don't know if you can see this or not, but right there is just a plastic tube sticking out of the engine block. And this has another O-ring down in here with this little plastic washer to hold it in place. You hear that snap in. And then you just got to get your linkages hooked up. Get your breather tube out of the way. Work that down under the bracket. And snap it on the tube. Now, it does have part of your air box is what holds the carburetor in place against the engine. You want to hook up your breather tube. And then start putting the screws back in. It's got a couple screws on the side that hold the back of the air box onto this U-shaped bracket on the side of the engine. And again, we got a couple self-tapping steel screws that go into plastic. And I dropped it. And this screw goes into the plastic carburetor. Now, I don't know if you heard that, but that's the threads lining up in the hole. This one didn't make a noise. And that's it. Now they got this cute little air breather here that just snaps on. I'm not going to put that on yet. we'll get the gas tank on. That, again, is 100% plastic. We'll get that snapped in place here. I'm losing a little fuel. For some reason it doesn't want to snap down on there. There we go. And the gas tank has a breather that goes inside of the air box. So I guess they figure if you overfill the gas tank, it's going to run in there. Maybe it's supposed to clean your air breather. I don't know. We get the hose on the carburetor. I know you can't see that. I can barely see it. Get the clamp up there. Now I also cleaned the gas tank out. It was the first time we cleaned it. We cleaned the carburetor. I put some fresh gas in the tank and tried to start it, and it wouldn't fire. So I took the carburetor apart again this morning and threw it in the cleaner, and it's still full of little particles that I don't know, almost look like very, very fine sand. So I cleaned the tank out this time. Now we'll put the cover back on the engine, and this kind of holds the whole thing together so nothing pops out of place. Now on the front of this engine, and maybe some of you high-tech engine guys can tell me what this is. Well, I got a little gas leak there. On the front of the engine, that has a shaft that hooks to the carburetor. Let me wiggle you down, is this little gadget here. It hooked to the muffler, and it overrides the choke, I think. So maybe once the engine gets hot, this pushes up and opens the choke and holds it open. I'm not really sure. So if that's what that thing is supposed to be for, and you know, let me know, would you? Okay, let's put the cover on this thing. Now this is our secretary's machine, and she lives alone. She has for years. She does all her own work, and she bought this thing, and she just couldn't get it to run. She said she used it 2 weeks ago and it ran great. So I'm not really sure how she is on maintenance. So if I get it running, before I give it back to her, I will change the oil and sharpen the blade. Well, let me get it down off this bench. I'll take it outside. I'll put some gas in it, and I'll bring you guys out, and cross your fingers, would you? I hope this thing runs, because if it doesn't run now, I'm going to have to say that it's a compression issue and it just doesn't have enough vacuum to suck the fuel into the engine, because it will start if you spray some kind of either carburetor cleaner or spray in some ether or just shoot a little gas up through the carburetor into the engine block, it will start up and run for about 2 seconds until it runs out of fuel, and then it quits. So let me get this thing outside, get you outside, and we'll see what happens. Hang on. Okay, let's give it a shot. Now, this thing has got one of these bars where if you let go of it, of course, it kills the engine because you have no other controls. So we're just going to put a little clamp on here so I don't have to hang on to it. Now I put fresh gas in it, and it is ethanol-free fuel. I do not burn ethanol in any small engine, and I don't recommend it. Now, I've had people get a hold of me after the last video I did on it, and they said, I live out in Texas, and I've been burning ethanol fuel in my machines for years, and I've never had a problem. You also live in a very dry climate. Texas, Arizona especially, they don't have the humidity that we have up here in Michigan. I'll give you a good example. Our air compressor at the shop, I drain every day, and it makes a lot of water. I'm pushing 150 pounds of pressure through the tank. I have a 3/8 diameter hose hooked to the bottom of the tank, and I'll turn that valve on and it will blow water for 20 minutes. And that's just for one 24-hour cycle. We have, excuse me, we have a problem up here with humidity, especially in the summer. Winter's not so bad. But if you live in a climate that's humid, please don't burn ethanol in your car, in your small engines. I got a guy at work says, "Oh, I've been burning it in my lawnmower forever." Well, don't ever try to take your carburetor apart and fix it, because it's going to be so corroded. As I showed you them 4 carburetors, they're all junk. Yeah, I guess the choice is yours. Now let's see if this thing runs, shall we? It says on here, she told me, it says right on here, no priming. It says no priming, no choke. That's because it's automatic. Guaranteed to start in 2 pulls. Well, that's when it's new. It's about 1.5 years old, and she thinks it should start on the 1st or 2nd pull, but whatever, I guess. Let's see what happens with this thing. Back inside. Well, that was a little noisy, but I can't believe this stupid thing's running. You can still hear it out there. I'm going to let it run for 10-15 minutes to make sure it keeps running. Plus, that will warm the engine up so I can change the oil, get some new oil in it, and I'll take it back to work with me Monday. Take the blade off, sharpen the blade, and give it back to her. And she says, well, keep track of how much I owe you. What do you say? I don't usually charge. You can't get rich, but hey, you make a lot of friends. So, until next time, I guess. I bought something new. The next video is going to be on something I bought new. I'm this coming May, I'm going to be 70 and I want to retire, at least part-time. And I'm just getting tired of having to fix everything. So I bought a brand new item that I've never had before. I've always bought old ones, fixed them, used them, sold them, got another old one. Well, the next video is going to be on a brand new machine I bought, and I can't wait to use it. Although it's one of those machines that I hope I never use. And that'll be coming up. So until next time, work safe, have fun, and yes, it's cold up here in Michigan. The flannels are back off the hangers. We'll talk to you soon. So long.